Hey scholars, Mr. Culp here. We have been talking a lot about signposts. Remember, signposts are those things that give us some sort of information, like a store is opening or that we can recycle here, something is under construction and so forth. Signposts, they give us directions. They help us stop, take notice of a particular item, and take note and truly analyze it. And when we look for signposts in our reading, we can dig deeper and analyze that text at a higher level. So it's time to talk about another signpost. That signpost is tough questions. So let's get started. We all ask questions such as, what's for dinner? Or where are my shoes? Or do I really have to do my homework? Now, these are all questions that we want answers to. They are sometimes important questions, but they're not what we would call tough questions. And that's what today's signpost is. It's all about bam, boom, tough hitting questions. Tough questions are those questions that we sometimes ask ourselves or somebody else that we don't have an immediate answer to. We might ask something like, how will I ever get over this after the loss of a loved one? There's no immediate answer, and it is often something that takes a long time to answer and figure out. Another example would be after a breakup. Sometimes we just ask ourselves, why? Why? And sometimes life throws us a very difficult decision that we just don't know what to do about. And we ask ourselves, oh my gosh, what should I do? Tough questions are a part of our everyday life when you think about it. What are some tough questions that you've had to try and answer? Think about it. When you share a tough question with a friend, or even just think about it to yourself, you're really sharing something that bothers you. In a novel, when a character is struggling with something internally and they're asking themselves a tough question, do you know what type of conflict they might be facing? If you said internal conflict, you are absolutely correct. If you can spot in a novel a tough question that a character is asking himself or a friend, you will have found some sort of conflict. Now remember, conflict is the struggle between two opposing forces. The struggle can be external or internal. So if our question is something along the lines of sitting down next to our friend and saying, why are we fighting? I don't even know. That is a tough question, probably, that we both are going to have to grapple with, and as a result of external conflict. And if we're just thinking about something and try to figure out something in our life, then it's probably internal. So for example, let's take this young lady here who is having a great day, but she is really in her brain thinking about, well, which college do I want to go to after I graduate? My boyfriend is going to ISU, but I think that Lewis has a better program for me. Of course, she wants to choose what she's going to choose that's best for her and not for others, and hopefully she comes to that realization as she grapples with this tough question. Oftentimes, tough question shows up in pairs. So one character might ask another character something like, hey, why won't they talk to me anymore? Why is everyone treating me this way? Occasionally, the character might not ask a question, but might say something with the phrase like, I wonder why, or, I wonder if. Perhaps the main character says something instead of like having a conversation with this friend, I wonder why I got left out. Once you notice the tough question or the statement, I wonder why or I wonder if, it's important to stop and ask yourself, well, what does this make me wonder about? Now, oftentimes, this will lead us to ask more questions and wonder about more topics. Think about it this way. If there was a party and you were not invited, you might ask yourself, why did I get left out? From that question, you might wonder if you had done something to hurt someone's feelings, or if someone is mad at you, or if there's something wrong with you, or if maybe you don't know the person who's having the party. One tough question usually makes us wonder about a lot of other things. Now, before we can review all of the things that we just talked about, we have to talk about two more things. Because one of the things that is important when we're looking at a tough question is understanding the context that the question is being asked in. For example, when am I going to eat again is not a tough question for me right now. I could go upstairs to my refrigerator or my pantry and get something to eat. But for someone else, this could be a question that they face every day and not truly know the answer to. Or if I'm asking this question to myself after not having eaten for 4 days because there is no food in my house, it becomes a tough question. The context matters. The context is kind of like the situation that we're asking it in. Which brings me to the other thing that's important. Because the other thing that we need to be aware about when reading is our setting. What if we lived in a society where we couldn't easily go to the store to buy something to eat? Is what's for dinner a tough question now? Think about being stuck in this pandemic right now. Some of the questions that we ask that weren't tough questions last year when we weren't in a pandemic are very tough questions today. Or think about the question, could you do it? Is that a tough question? Again, it depends on the context. For instance, if I said, hey, could you do a layup in basketball? Not such a tough question. If you asked that to me, I'd be like, no. I could try to do one, but you'd probably laugh at it. But when we change the context of that question or the setting, it could be one of the toughest questions we face. So let's review. When authors want to show us conflict or the deep problems that are worrying a character, they oftentimes have the character ask himself or herself or another person a really difficult question. And when we see a tough question, we should stop and ask ourselves 2 questions. What does this question make me wonder about? Again, sometimes that's going to lead you down a rabbit hole of lots of wonderings. And again, focusing on those literary elements, what conflict is causing this tough question? An internal, an external? What is that conflict and what is the heart of it? And as always, here are my wonderful notes. So go ahead and pause the video here and copy these notes. As always, I can't recommend taking notes enough. After we learn something, when we write it, we connect it in our brain in a different way. So please, please, please take notes. So that is tough questions in a nutshell. So ask yourselves these 2 things when you see a tough question so you can analyze and read a text closer and have great discussion. Happy reading, scholars. Enjoy the rest of your day.